You might think no one notices what you are doing, yet there is always someone quietly observing you more closely than you realize. They notice when you succeed, when you struggle, when you post something new, or when your life suddenly begins to change. Psychology says jealousy often hides behind attention, which means the people who watch you the most are sometimes the ones who secretly compare and themselves to you. At first, it feels confusing because jealousy rarely looks like hatred on the surface. Instead, it appears as curiosity, small questions, subtle comments, and the feeling that someone is always paying attention to your moves. Research shows that the human brain is wired for social comparison, which means your progress can unintentionally trigger insecurity in others. Your brain naturally wants acceptance and belonging, but jealousy appears when someone feels your growth threatens their position. This is why some people begin observing you carefully, as if they are trying to understand what makes you different. Psychology calls this upward social comparison, where someone studies another person who seems to be doing better than them. Imagine you start improving your life. Maybe you become more confident, more disciplined, or more successful. Suddenly, someone who never paid attention before begins liking everything you post, asking about your plans, and watching what you do. Psychology says jealousy often begins the moment your progress forces someone to confront their own stagnation. The strange part is that jealous people rarely admit what they feel. Instead, their brain protects their ego by turning admiration into quiet competition. Research shows that when someone feels inferior, their mind looks for ways to monitor the person who triggered that feeling. This is why jealous people watch you so closely, because your life becomes a mirror, reflecting everything they think they lack. Your confidence reminds them of their insecurity, your discipline reminds them of their excuses, and your growth reminds them of their fear. Psychology says people often observe what threatens their identity more than what inspires them. Sometimes the attention becomes subtle but persistent, like someone always checking your social media or asking others about your progress. They may not openly criticize you, yet their curiosity feels strangely intense. Your brain can sense this tension because humans are surprisingly good at detecting hidden emotional signals. Jealous observation also happens because the mind wants explanations for success. When someone feels behind, they begin analyzing your behavior, trying to discover the secret formula behind your progress. Research shows that people experiencing envy often become hyper-focused on the person they compare themselves with. Think about how athletes study their competitors before a competition. Jealous people do something similar, except the competition exists mostly in their own mind. Psychology calls this perceived rivalry, where someone mentally turns another person into a competitor, even if that person never intended to compete. This is why someone might suddenly start asking detailed questions about your habits, routines, or plans. They are not always asking because they admire you. They are asking because they want to measure themselves against you. Your brain recognizes this subtle testing, even if the words sound harmless. Another reason jealous people watch you closely is something called status anxiety. Research shows humans constantly evaluate their position within social groups. When someone believes your success is raising your status, they may begin watching you carefully to see how far you go. Imagine two co-workers working at the same company for years. One begins developing new skills, gaining recognition, and improving their life. The other suddenly becomes very observant, not because they hate the person, but because your growth challenges their sense of status. Your brain interprets status changes as social signals that affect identity and belonging. When someone feels their position slipping, their attention naturally shifts toward the person they see as responsible. Psychology says jealousy is often less about hate and more about threatened identity. Sometimes jealousy also appears when people feel left behind. If two friends once lived similar lives and one suddenly begins evolving, the dynamic quietly changes. Research shows humans prefer equality in close relationships, which means growth can unintentionally disturb emotional balance. The jealous observer begins paying attention to every detail of your progress. They notice your new habits, your new confidence, and even the way others respond to you. Your brain may sense their attention even if they never say anything directly. What makes jealousy complicated is that it can exist alongside admiration. A person might respect your success while simultaneously feeling uncomfortable about their own life. Psychology calls this ambivalent envy, where admiration and resentment exist at the same time. This emotional conflict often makes people watch quietly rather than openly compete. They observe from a distance, trying to understand how your life is changing. Research shows that observing successful individuals can sometimes motivate growth, but it can also intensify insecurity. Another psychological reason jealous people watch you closely is confirmation bias. Their brain begins searching for evidence that explains your success or failure. If you succeed, they may think you were lucky, and if you struggle, they may secretly feel relief. Confirmation bias allows the mind to protect self-esteem by interpreting events in ways that support existing beliefs. If someone believes they should be doing better than you, they may look for reasons to prove that belief. Your brain, however, simply continues, focusing on your own path, which is why their attention often feels unnecessary. There is also a deeper emotional factor involved, which is identity comparison. Humans often define themselves through the people around them. When someone similar begins rising faster, their mind feels pressured to reevaluate their own identity. Psychology says the closer someone is to you, the stronger jealousy can become. Friends, colleagues, and relatives often compare themselves more intensely than strangers do. This is why the people watching you the most are sometimes the ones who know you best. Your growth may challenge the invisible roles people assigned to you years ago. If someone always saw you as quiet, average, or predictable, your sudden improvement can confuse their expectations. Research shows the brain resists changes that disrupt familiar social patterns. When expectations break, jealousy sometimes replaces understanding. Instead of celebrating your transformation, someone begins studying it closely. Your brain may interpret this observation as pressure, but it is actually a reflection of their internal struggle. Jealous attention also increases because success attracts curiosity. When people see someone improving, they instinctively want to know how it happened. Psychology says humans naturally look for patterns that explain unexpected success. This curiosity becomes stronger when the observer feels emotionally connected to the situation. They watch closely, hoping to discover something they can either imitate or criticize. Your brain simply continues evolving, while their mind remains focused on comparison. Sometimes jealous people watch you because they are trying to predict your next move. They want to know if your success will continue or if it will eventually collapse. Research shows the mind often seeks reassurance that perceived inequality will eventually balance itself. This expectation explains why jealous observers often notice your mistakes faster than anyone else. Their brain is already scanning for signs that confirm their internal narrative. Psychology says attention naturally focuses on information that supports emotional beliefs. Despite all this attention, your life is rarely the main story in their mind. The real story is the conversation happening inside their own thoughts. Your progress simply becomes the trigger that exposes their hidden insecurities. Understanding this dynamic can change the way you interpret jealous behavior. Instead of feeling confused, you begin recognizing the psychological patterns behind their actions. Your brain realizes their attention says more about their struggles than it does about your success. Psychology says self-awareness is one of the strongest protections against jealousy. When you understand your purpose and direction, external observation loses its power. The more focused you are on growth, the less meaningful their attention becomes. You may still notice people watching, judging, or quietly comparing themselves to you, but their attention stops feeling threatening once you've recognized the psychology behind it. Research shows confidence increases when people focus on internal goals rather than external approval. Jealous people watch closely because your life reminds them of possibilities they have not yet pursued. Your discipline highlights their hesitation, and your courage highlights their doubt. Your brain simply continues moving forward, while their mind remains trapped in comparison. In the end, jealousy is less about competition and more about reflection. The person observing you is often searching for answers about themselves, not about you. Psychology says the people who trigger envy often become powerful mirrors for personal growth. So, when you feel someone watching your life too closely, Remember what psychology quietly reveals? Their attention is not proof that you are doing something wrong. It is often proof that you are doing something meaningful. Your brain is moving toward progress, and sometimes that progress becomes impossible for others to ignore, and the truth most people eventually realize is simple yet powerful. The more someone grows, the more visible they become to those still comparing themselves. Psychology says the healthiest response is to keep evolving because the best way to deal with jealous observers is to continue becoming the person they cannot stop watching.